All right, we are live. Hello, everyone. I'm just gonna let the attendees trickle in and then we'll get started. All right. Well, hello, everyone, and welcome to our 2021 Monterey County ADU Conference. This is our second annual countywide ADU event. Thank you all for being here and for joining us. My name is Kelly DeWolf. I am the Impact Manager for Affordable Housing here at United Way Monterey County. United Way Monterey County has been collaboratively working to promote the development of ADUs by focusing on infill housing as a strategy for increasing housing supply for several years now. We have done this in collaboration with several key partners in our ADU advisory group. And last year we hosted a countywide ADU conference featuring ADU expert Cole Peterson in collaboration with the AIA Monterey Bay. So among those partners who have been with us along for the ride is the Monterey Bay Economic Partnership, or MBEP, who of course plays a key role in housing policy in the region. And we are so excited to be co-hosting this event with them this year. This year's conference was really inspired by the feedback that we received from the community and after last year's event, and of course our own knowledge of some of the barriers to ADU development in our county. We wanted to focus this year on financing and cost savings and explore the pros and cons of prefabricated units as both a source of affordable housing and as kind of a direction for homeowners to take when considering and thinking about their ADU projects. I wanted to, if we can go to the next slide, I just also wanted to thank our sponsors for this event. Without our sponsors, we would not be able to be here today. So thank you so much to the City of Pacific Grove, the City of Salinas, and to the Monterey County Association of Realtors. And I also wanted to thank our event supporters. We had several collaborative organizations who contributed in kind by helping with planning this event and spreading the word. So thank you so much to the City of Gonzales, City of Monterey, City of Pacific Grove, City of Salinas, City of Seaside, the American Association of Architects, Monterey Bay chapter, and the Monterey County Association of Realtors, and of course our three who will be one of our presenters today. In terms of our program today, we have a fabulous list of speakers, and you can actually see here on the program. We're going to start off with a presentation on ADU policy, and then we will move on to financing. And the third part of our webinar today will focus on prefabricated ADUs. So before we get started, I just wanted to do a little housekeeping. We will have time for Q&A. We will be taking some questions after our first presenter, and then we will be saving the rest of the Q&A to the end after all of our speakers are completed with their presentations. So feel free to use the chat for comments, but we actually prefer that questions be asked in the Q&A, which is by clicking the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen. And participants should also like and upvote questions that they'd like to be asked. So again, we'll be doing questions at the end. And if you're experiencing any technical difficulties, please send a chat message to Maya Reed, who is supporting us today on the back end. Maya Reed from MBEP, thank you. So I'm really excited to introduce our first speaker today, Greg Nicholas, Housing Policy Specialist at the State of California Department of Housing and Community Development. Greg has been with the Housing Policy Division for over 8 years, with emphasis on accessory dwelling units and junior accessory dwelling units. His involvement with ADU law commenced prior to the significant updates to the ADU statute that occurred late in 2016. In addition, he provides technical assistance to local government representatives, housing providers, housing advocacy organizations, and addresses issues related to land use, as well as state, federal, and local housing planning and financing programs and requirements. He also monitors performance measures, evaluates housing program results, and authors reports on the status of various housing programs. So welcome, Greg.
Thank you. Well, I'd just like to see when we'll have the first page of the PowerPoint. And the next, please. Just want to cover a few things here. The ADU laws are not brand new. They've been in, California's had ADU laws since, as noted here, 1982. There have been, much of today's laws are as a result of significant changes to ADU law, which became effective January of 1980. But recent updates, cleanup items basically became effective in 2021. HCD provides ordinance reviews, as noted, and technical assistance all day long, every day, to property owners, architects, engineers, developers, builders, cities and counties, and to keep everything as consistent as possible. We invite those TA requests so that we can keep everyone on the same page. The JADU, that is Junior Accessory Dwelling Unit Law, was updated effective 2020 to move from an allowed housing unit with an adopted ADU ordinance, a JADU ordinance, to mandated. So JADUs are now required to be allowed by cities and counties throughout the state, just as ADUs are. Next page, please. So this is getting back into history a little bit, but the bills that changed the ADU law that we primarily use today are those noted here, and these became effective January 2020. At the bottom, though, it says, and AB 3182 went into effect January 2021. It's just sort of a cleanup bill, and it clarified how an ADU may be created with a JADU on the same property. Prior to that, there was one word that was wrong. It was or rather than and that's pretty much the changes. So point I want to make on this, though, too, is when you're taking a look at anything related to ADU law, don't look at the bills that are noted here. Take a look at the law in the government code, because all these bills have been folded in to the law. So there might even be some conflict between one of these laws and another one, but when they were all approved, they are then reflected in government code. I hate to quote code, but 65852.2 and 0.22. Next page, please. Effective January 2020, impact fees for ADUs that are under 170 or 750 square feet are exempt. They cannot be charged. If the ADU is larger than 750 square feet, then that entire square footage of that ADU shall pay an impact fee that is proportional to the size between the ADU and the primary dwelling. So we use that as an example: 2,000 square foot home, 1,000 square foot ADU, 50% ratio there. So the impact fees that would be charged to the ADU would be 50% of what would be charged for the primary dwelling. There are no more minimum lot sizes. And there are many sizes that square footages are involved in ADU law, as noted at the first bullet. Impact fees less than 750. There's a requirement that all cities and counties allow at least an 800 square foot ADU, no matter what the situation is: lot size, FARs, lot coverage, or open space requirements. At least 800 square feet must be allowed. If there aren't any constraints there, then ADUs of a studio or one bedroom can't be required to be less than 850 square feet. More than one bedroom, they can't be required to be less than 1,000 square feet. Public transit definition was refined, and that is now noted in today's government code section. Let me see here. Oh, there's one other thing that we're going to be adding up, updating our ADU handbook, which I request that everyone takes a look at. Short-term rentals is an item that comes up a lot. Cities and counties may prohibit short-term rentals with an ADU, but they are not required to put any limitation on the rental period. If an ADU is created under the exemption, the city county development section exemption section, then state law says that they will not be short-term rentals. ADUs are also allowed with a proposed or existing multifamily. There's a lot of confusion here, and that ADUs, it looks like if someone reads the statute, that ADUs are only allowed when there's an existing multifamily dwelling structure on the property. In the first part of ADU statute, it says if there is an ADU proposed in an area that allows single family or multifamily, then of course the ADU is allowed. Then a little bit further into statute, it says if there's a proposed or existing dwelling, the law changed a year and a half ago. It used to say single family, no longer does. So if there's a dwelling on the property, including a multifamily, an ADU must be allowed. Now, in that first part, there's only one ADU allowed on that lot with a single family or a multifamily. In the exemption section further into statute, there are provisions to have more than one ADU on a site with an existing multifamily dwelling structure. ADUs do include manufactured homes, not mobile homes, manufactured homes. Other than that, ADUs shall comply with local building code, which means that when you have a structure such as a modular, a factory-built home, panelized wall systems that need inspection at a plant, those are built to meet the standards of the California Residential Code. So anything else would be the local building code on site. So we have two different situations here. Basically, we'll call it a stick-built ADU or an ADU that is a manufactured home. This is also addressed in the California Health and Safety Code about what's allowed here, and essentially a manufactured home is a HUD approved project. Now we go to the next page, please. Maximum back one, please. There we go. Maximum ADU parking requirements are 1 space per ADU. You take a look at the law, it says 1 space per ADU or per bedroom, whichever is less. So it comes down to no more than 1 parking space can be required for an ADU. And then it notes here, unless exempted. There are 5 exemptions in state law where an ADU shall not be required to provide parking. If an ADU is created in an existing parking structure, one that's used for the primary dwelling, the replacement parking may not be required to be replaced on site, which means on the street. Most likely means on the street. Off-street parking is allowed, and on-site parking may be tandem or in setback areas. Next page, please. ADUs or JADUs may be created within an existing structure. Any zone that allows a single family or multifamily allows an ADU to created. JADUs, junior accessory dwelling units, are limited to being created within the walls of a single family structure. JADUs by state law are not allowed in multifamily structures. So as mentioned earlier, the law currently allows an ADU and a JADU to be created in a lot. A couple of those scenarios are you build the JADU within the habitable space of the primary dwelling, and you create the ADU in the existing attached garage or detached garage. You could but you can't, the law the way it is right now, you can't build the ADU as an addition to the primary dwelling. So the ADU would either be within an accessory structure, detached from the primary, or it's somewhere within the primary dwelling structure. By the way, an attached garage can either have an ADU or a JADU created in it. Fire sprinklers may not be required. They may be a solution to some of the issues that a site might have, such as Inadequate water, inadequate access, they can't be required because there are other options for design. And I'm not going to get into those because a lot of those are building and fire code related items. Local development standards may not be applied to an ADU or a JADU created within the existing structure. Per law, and you think about it, the structure's already there. What does the zoning code, does the local development standards have to say about something that's a change of use within an existing structure? Local development codes with an adopted ADU ordinance, of course, may apply standards such as height, size, roof pitch, that type of thing. JADUs, it says just within a single family residence, not in a multifamily. And always, I suppose with the one exception for fire sprinklers, ADUs and JADUs must comply with local agency building codes. And then this other point, you have to have an access, an entry point directly to the outside for both an ADU and a JADU. Next page, please. So this goes back again a little over a year and a half ago. There were such significant changes between the ADU laws prior to 2020 and those that became effective January 1, 2020, that those older ordinances are considered null and void. We see that that many of those prior to 2020 might have a very small number of things that would comply with today's code. When we had the change to law in January 1, 2021, those changes were so small, there's no reason to update an ordinance that was in compliance with law effective January 1, 2020. If a jurisdiction does not have an adopted ADU ordinance in place, then they are limited to using the state standards until they adopt a compliant ADU ordinance. One interesting clue is here, though, is that under standard provisions of the ADU statute, the state has no height limitations. So there are a lot of jurisdictions that have visibility concerns, coastal areas, for instance, that in their zoning code, they may have limitations on heights for the primary dwelling or an accessory structure without any ordinance. And state law not having a height limitation, those standards, those local standards on height may not be used. Here's another important thing is when a city or county does adopt an ADU ordinance, they are required to send it to HCD within 60 days of adoption. We are reviewing ordinances, but there are so many to review. We were reviewing so many draft ordinances weeks and months ago to see that they were as compliant with state law as possible before the effort was made to adopt them. But we're trying to get away from that. And the ordinances that we're reviewing now are primarily associated with a housing element that's recently been submitted to HCD for review. Next page, please. I think we've already covered the short term. A city or county may restrict short-term rentals, and they may not require an owner occupancy situation with an ADU. A JADU is the owner must live in one of the two units, the JADU or the primary dwelling. Cities and counties don't have to limit short-term rentals unless they do it under a section that doesn't have to comply with local agencies. And if you have any questions about it, it says per subdivision E here. If you have questions about that, just give us an email or a call, and we'll get into that situation a little bit more. As long as the lot is zoned for single family or multifamily use, or there's an existing use is existing, an ADU is allowed on that property. As I said earlier, there's no minimum lot size. There are no constraints for ADUs that are converted from an existing space. Let me see. And we've covered the square footage. always, oh, this is a question that comes up quite often. The total floor space of an attached unit does not, that's an addition to the primary, does not exceed 50% of the existing or proposed living area, but still must be allowed at least 800. An example of that would be you have a 1,000 square foot house, 50% of that would be 500 square feet, but ADU law allows at least an 800 square foot ADU. So that even comes up. You could have a 600 square foot house, but you're still allowed an 800 square foot ADU. So the ADU could be bigger than the primary dwelling. It doesn't matter. At least 800 square feet is always allowed. If the ADU is created within the space of an existing structure, there are no size limitations. The structure is already there. So as an example, if you had a lot with a primary dwelling on it with an existing accessory structure of 2,000 square feet, that entire space could be converted to an ADU. No limitations, as long as it's within that. If it goes outside the space of that existing structure, then the other part of the statute comes into play, and there could be limitations of 800, 850, or 1,000 square feet. ADU and JADU applications shall be processed within 60 days. And prior to 2020, that was 120 days. And there's a lot of schedules that have to be squeezed here, and that is the entire application. As soon as the permitting application or permitting agency has received an application for an ADU or a JADU, it shall be processed within 60 days. Basically, it means deemed approved or denied with findings. So it includes all the steps along the way: planning, building, any other public works office, 60 days. Next page, please. Okay, the JADUs, what's the difference between a JADU and an ADU? The JADU shall be within the walls of the existing or proposed single-family residence, which includes an attached garage. It's limited to one per residential lot for single-family use and may be combined with an ADU. It does have a maximum size limitation of 500 square feet. The owner is to occupy one of those two units, the primary or the JADU. There is a recorded deed restriction required with a couple of items as noted in JADU statute. And an efficiency kitchen is required. Now, a little bit different than the wording in ADU law, and I might as well cover that here too. ADU law says provisions for cooking. It also says that an ADU shall comply with local building codes. The building code, California Residential Code, does not require appliances. So provisions for cooking could mean storage, food preparation service, a sink, and electrical outlets per the building codes. There cannot be requirement for a refrigerator, a range, an oven, a microwave. Those could be plugged into outlets that are provided in that kitchen space on a plan. One thing I have not noted here is that even though the JADU is limited to 500 square feet, if it also has all the necessary items for an ADU, it might be 500 square feet or less. And if it has a bathroom and provisions for cooking and sleeping and living and eating, it could also be considered an ADU. It's really pretty much up to the applicant to decide what it's going to be. The one thing we do have noted in our ADU handbook is when an ADU is created within the parking structure for the primary dwelling, it is not required to replace those parking spaces on site. The JADU statute does not have that same item in it. So if someone were to create a JADU within a parking structure for the primary dwelling, they may be required to replace that parking structure per the jurisdiction's zoning code. Next slide, please. Also, as noted earlier, if you have questions, we receive many of them. Call us or send us an email. The ADU handbook that's available at our webpage is the one that's dated 2020. It should be the only one that's there. We note on our website a lot of information from other jurisdictions, guides, plans that are available from some jurisdictions within their jurisdiction, of course. And here's our webpage. As I mentioned, if a jurisdiction is listening in here, our priority is reviews of adopted ordinances and no longer draft ordinances. And we are in the process of constantly updating the website and currently updating the handbook. Regarding the financing, Cal HFA has just provided grants, and I need to get into this. We need to get into this a little bit further, but up to $25,000 for the creation of an ADU. This information, contact information for Cal HFA, is on our HCD ADU webpage, and so you might go there and take a look at that, and then maybe contact Cal HFA. And this is my contact information, or you can also send it to adu@hcdca.gov. And the last page is that basically that information again. Sometimes it's a little tough for people to find the ADU webpage at HCD. You can go to California ADU law, and it gives you, I think that the HCD selection or choice is right at the top of the list. So that's the presentation. Hopefully it was not too much information too fast. Are there any questions that anyone might have?
There are. We have quite a few questions.
Okay.
Thank you so much, Greg. The first question is, can JADUs be created as part of a new detached ADU? And I think you did allude to this in your presentation. That is one of the questions.
JADUs may be applied for at any time. If an ADU is existing, a JADU can come back and apply for if an ADU is existing, a JADU application can follow that at a later date. Both are allowed. It's just the constraints of where a JADU may be created. It's got to be within the walls of the existing, or not, of a proposed or existing primary residence. Does that answer the question? So you can have you could either have an ADU and then come back in and apply for a JADU, or you can have a JADU and come back in and apply for an ADU. As long as they're created as allowed by statute, you can have both, and they don't need to be processed at the same time.
I think, let me see, the person who asked the question raised their hand, so let me.
Yes, thank you. I believe there's still some confusion in my mind that if you have a proposed ADU that's detached, you're going to build, and you would like to have 2 units, but you don't have room in the primary structure.
Yes.
But you're saying that even if you do it in a serial fashion, first ADU and then JADU, you still won't be allowed to do the JADU as part of your new detached ADU. I had heard no. Oh, rats.
No, that's correct. The JADU must be in the primary dwelling.
Thank you.
Yeah, so it can, and the question comes up fairly often. The JADU cannot be in an accessory structure. It has to be in the primary dwelling.
Okay,
now, there are some jurisdictions will say, okay, well, people say, I'd like to have a bathroom. Don't have to have a bathroom. The bathroom of a JADU can be shared with the primary dwelling where the JADU is created, but they say, I'd like to have a bathroom in my JADU. Can I add square footage to the house while I'm with the permit application to create the JADU? Well, if you read the law, no, it has to be within the walls of. Well, someone could go in with a permit to add a bathroom, get that completed, and then come back in with a JADU application to create the JADU within what are now the walls of the primary residence. I've talked to a few jurisdictions that says we know where they're going. We'll allow them to do both at one time rather than have a 2-step process, and that's really good. The intent here is to create as many new housing units.
Thank you. Another question we have is, can you talk briefly about laws related to homeowners association restrictions on ADUs?
Great question. A little unrelated, but it does address ADUs. The bill was approved, went into effect January of 2020, and this was an interesting one. You have common interest developments, and I'll address that a little bit here. If CCNRs or and the HOAs enforce the CCNRs, if CCNRs do not allow a second unit, formerly a second unit, but now an ADU or JADU, state law prevails over that and says that CCNRs within the development may not prohibit a JADU or ADU, even though the CCNRs prohibit it. The note here is that is if that proposed ADU or JADU is within a common interest development. And I'll just, a quick definition or example of that is if you've got a swimming pool or a clubhouse in your development, or you have gates that are hinged off of property that's owned by all the people within the development, you have a common interest development. Many subdivisions have CCNRs. I mean, everyone has CCNRs. CCNRs in a community, a development, a subdivision that don't have common interest property may still prohibit JADUs and ADUs if it is restricted by their CCNRs. But common interest, so just about any gated community, I would imagine, is prohibited from restricting the creation of ADUs and JADUs.
Okay, thank
And
you.
that's a civil code section 4751. And for anyone who wants to dig into it a little bit, the definition for common interest development is civil code 4100.
Okay, thank you. Another question that we got here is about SB 9. How does SB 9 affect ADUs? Can you just speak briefly to that?
It's like we've got enough bills going through here. I mentioned that, oh, maybe it was before we started this. SB 9, it was just chaptered or just signed the 16th of this month. So only about 2 weeks ago. We're in the once it was signed, now we're putting the effort into analyzing the final version of the bill, final being because it was signed by the governor, to see just what it is. It does have an impact on ADUs, but my unofficial comment on that is it does allow lot splits. It does allow more than a single family dwelling on a lot that's zoned for single family. But it's anyway, we're analyzing it now. If you do a duplex, for instance, on one of the lots that's being created as allowed by SB 9, you might not be allowed to do an ADU, but at the same time, you're creating 2 units on the lot. If a lot of people think about what an ADU is, and especially an ADU attached to a primary dwelling, and for all intents and purposes, you really can't tell the difference between a duplex and a primary dwelling with an ADU attached to it. But please, let's look at it this way. It's being analyzed. HCD will put out a document noting the allowances and the limitations of SB 9 when it goes into effect. When it goes into effect January 1 of 2022. Okay. So the best thing right now, if someone wants an answer, I can't really offer much of anything else except take a look at the signed bill, and also take a look at the Ledge Council's digest explaining what the bill does. And it will say existing law, and this bill will allow.
Thank you. And we have time for, I think, one more question.
Okay.
Before we have to move on, but we will be doing more Q&A at the end, and there will be many people on here who might be able to answer your question. So we won't be throwing your questions out just yet.
Okay.
So the last question is, can you talk a little bit about the 60-day review and approval period? We had a couple of people ask questions about this. What is the definition of a complete application, and what is an owner's recourse when the building department delays approval beyond 60 days?
Well, most jurisdictions, I would imagine, have a checklist to say, here's what you need in an application for building permit. Site plan, foundation plan, floor plan, elevations and such. And if that's not complete, then it's not a complete application. We'd hope that it's too many applications are not taken in without being complete. But if an application is taken in by the permitting agency and then find out that it's not complete, that jurisdiction would be contacting the applicant to say, you don't have a complete application, or here's a plan checklist of items that we need or need to be changed. That 60-day clock stops. And when that application is taken back in, addressing the local agency's list of missing items or items needing to be corrected, the clock starts again. So it's a start-stop clock through the process. Within the 60 days that the local agency has had that application, they need to take action on it, which means approve or deny. And if it's denied, there would have to be findings with it. So 60 days total time, accepting the time that it's put back in the applicant's hands.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Greg. We really appreciate you sharing your expertise. And again, we will have more information available. There's more information available on the website, and we will have more questions. We'll take more questions at the end of everyone's presentations.
I can see a flood of emails and telephone calls coming in after this. That's what we're here for. Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, so I'm going to bring on Ashley Gower with me here from MBEP, and we're going to talk a little bit about the joint policy paper, the ADU white paper that we're working on in collaboration between our two organizations. We kind of divided this collaborative paper into two sections. And I guess I'll talk a little bit about the background first of this paper. So we, through the ADU initiative here at United Way Monterey County, we have formed a countywide ADU advisory group, which brings together ADU advocates, affordable housing advocates, builders, design professionals, and others together to strategize around ADU development in the county. And out of that advisory group came a policy subcommittee where we kind of discussed the need to break down some of these things that Greg was talking about, and also as they apply specifically to our county. So in front of you on the slide, you can see an infographic that we created. The first part of our policy paper is really focused on the 2020 ADU laws and what changes have come into play in the state of California that will affect local homeowners and local city staff as well. One thing that we've really seen over the past year and a half is a lot of confusion, particularly on how to navigate these really complex and multifaceted changes. So we really wanted to highlight the key takeaways. And since this information is pretty widely available, we wanted to be as comprehensive as possible, and we really wanted to make it digestible. And this infographic is one example, just to kind of visually demonstrate some of the changes. So some of the questions that we answer in part one are like, what are the changes and how they impact my area or my project? If I live in a coastal zone, what are my options for building an ADU? What does the law say about that? What does the law say about water restrictions as it relates to ADUs? And what are some of the things that I might need to know when I'm advocating for my project? We also really break it down to some of those issues that impact Monterey County homeowners, like coastal zones, water use, water availability restrictions, and how ADU law can apply differently to different types of ADUs. And we get into subdivision E ADUs, for example. And then finally, we're hoping to also go into some changes that have taken place in 2021 with SB 9 and SB 10 as these bills apply to ADUs. So I'm going to turn it over to Ashley Gower and let her introduce herself and talk about the second part of the paper.
Great, cool. Thanks. Thanks, Kelly, so much. So hi, everyone. My name is Ashley, and I am the program manager for special projects across our climate change, transportation, workforce development, and housing initiatives at the Monterey Bay Economic Partnership. And working with United Way Monterey County on ADU research and development is one of those special projects that falls under our housing initiative that actually came out of our housing policy white paper back in 2018, which we can go ahead and throw a link in the chat box, and was sort of the driving force to partner with United Way on the development of a countywide ADU initiative, which I have to say has made significant progress in terms of educating and advocating and supporting ADU development across the county. So thank you to Kate and Josh and everyone at the United Way Monterey County team, and especially to Kelly for leading and managing such an impactful program. And I would be remiss not to thank Emmy specifically, who's also on this call with the Santa Cruz Business Council, for her early contributions to the paper and to the initiative during her time at MBEP. So next slide, please. For the second half of the ADU white paper, we dive into more local policy recommendations. If you can go to the next slide, that'd be great. This is really just an overview of the paper itself, and we're in the process of fine-tuning some of the latest state laws around SB 9 and SB 10, like Kelly mentioned. But we also go into more local policy recommendations, everything from ADU ordinances and housing elements to more specific zoning and land use regulations around owner occupancy and parking requirements, development impact fees and deed restrictions, and prioritizing water actually for affordable housing units. And then we go into best practices and resources around things like establishing pre-approved plans, encouraging sustainable building, developing a finance guide and innovative financing models, as well as providing continual homeowner education and resources at the jurisdiction level. And on the note of ADU ordinances, as a matter of fact, which we do go into a lot more detail in the paper, the city of Gonzales, for example, established one, which is actually slated to be adopted by city council next Monday. So if you're interested in attending, we'll certainly drop a link in the chat as well. And like Kelly said, all of this is really meant to inspire and guide everyone from elected officials, planning, housing staff, homeowners, builders, architects, contractors, lenders, and housing advocates as well across the county. Also important to keep in mind that a lot of what's discussed today and in our ADU white paper can certainly be applied and adapted to other jurisdictions in the region. So be on the lookout for the paper in the next 2 weeks or so. We'll go ahead and send an e-blast to everyone participating on this in this webinar. In addition to some of our newsletters and social, it'll also be available on our websites. So without further ado, next slide, we're super grateful for this opportunity to have 6 leading organizations on financing and building programs and products. And we're going to go ahead and start with Mr. Satish Rishi, who's the Chief Executive Officer for Habitat for Humanity Monterey Bay, to talk a little bit about their affordable loan programs for low-income homeowners. And I'll go ahead and drop his bio in the chat just to save us some time. So take it away, Satish.
Thank you, Ashley. So just by way of background, Habitat, we've been around for about 30 some years in the Monterey and Santa Cruz areas, and we build affordable homes or affordable units. So we are nonprofit, and 100% of what we build is for low income between the AMI is below 80%. We have built about 57 units. By units, I mean a combination of single family homes, some townhomes, and ADUs. The first ADU we built was back in 2007, so almost 14 years ago. So we have been in this business for a while. We have a partnership with the city of Santa Cruz under the My House, My Home program, which was primarily targeted towards seniors. And this came about when there was a discussion a few years ago between the city and Habitat about what can we do for seniors, aging seniors, especially Santa Cruz, because we look at the demographics in Santa Cruz, we do have a fair number of seniors who have equity in the home, but may not be able to afford living here under Social Security, or maybe they have too many loans. So we came up with this proposal where we can build the ADU, and as long as the ADU is rented out to a low-income family, then the city of Santa Cruz would provide a loan of $80,000, and we would provide the labor and the planning for it, and the rent from that ADU would then end up going to the senior. So we built about 4 independently built ADUs, and we also, one of the laws that we pushed and proposed and passed was AB 587, where you could sell the ADU separately from the actual unit. So it's called tenancy in common. So you could have different ownership. And that also, I think there's some specifics to it and how it's built and how it can be sold. I think both the main unit and the ADU have to be built at the same time. And they both have to be built by a nonprofit organization. So that's what we've been doing. So we're building ADUs, and then for the last couple of years, we haven't built too many ADUs. We've been busy with building single-family homes. But last year, we did receive a grant from Cal Home, from the HCD, to build ADUs, and I'll talk about that a little bit. We've been working with different cities trying to figure out the right mix of families, because it has to be a low-income family, and we have one project currently at Plan Check, the city of Marina. It's taking longer than I expected to get through the whole process. I have to go and check when the 60-day window started. But one thing, I hate to say this, but one thing I found is that there is a lot of lip service from many of the organizations, but not the actual movement of paper and the permitting process is still very, very slow. I think we can do a lot better to move these things forward and faster, given the housing crisis that we have in this area. Next slide, please. These are just a couple of pictures just to show you what we have built in the past. The one on the left, I think, is our most recent one on Fairmont Street in Santa Cruz. The one on the right is Frederick Street. And a couple of others. We have quite a few pictures. I just wanted to show you that these are good-looking, well-built ADUs. If you go to the next slide. So what do we have now? So, as I mentioned, we got this funding from Cal Home, and we have funding of $1 million, and we can spend up to $100 per ADU. Typically, it'll be our desire to source the ADU, find the family, build the ADU using our volunteers, and then move the family move into the low-income family into the ADU. But given that we have to use most of this funding within a 3-year period, we are trying something new. So this is a new program. In fact, I'm actually, taking to the board later today after this meeting. So the board hasn't even formally approved this program. But what we're trying to do over here is say, if we can't help in building, maybe we can help in financing. So what we're trying to do is maybe we'll finance up to 5 ADUs, and the requirements in this case is that the family, the homeowner, has to be a low income, meaning 80% AMI, or if it's a disaster affected areas, then they could be they can be up to 120% AMI. The way the financing works, and it's obviously you can see it's very good financing. It's a 30-year loan with a balloon payment at 0% interest. So this is the grant that we have from Cal Home, and this is what we are offering as part of the financing for the ADU. In addition, given that our mission is to build low-income units, what we are also requiring is that there is a deed restriction or a forgivable lien on the property. We don't know exactly what the amount would be, but I said maybe 10% for starters, but it's a forgivable lien, so it's not a cash loan. But for every year that the ADU is rented to a low-income family, we will reduce the lien by 1/20th. So that means if you rent it for 20 years to a low-income family, then at the end of 20 years, that lien is taken away, and all you have is the loan that you have to pay off in year 30, which is again only the principal because you're paying zero interest on it. So of course, if you sell the property, both of these loans become, both of the balances will be due and payable at that point in time. If you go to the next slide. So what we are looking at is for a qualified home buyer, as I mentioned, 80% AMI or 120% in affected area. We would like to see that they have a proof of funds for the balance of the project, because we don't want to provide funding and fund other projects to go forward. We want them to have a valid permit from the city, or if it's a unincorporated area, from the county. We have to have a licensed contractor who is going to be doing the building, have a timeline, and then we will provide, we'll review the contract, we'll be involved in looking at the appropriateness, and then once started, we'll have quarterly check-in meetings to make sure that, how the progress is going, because obviously we don't want any project that we are going to finance to be abandoned midway. Next slide, please. So the last slide. Oh, sorry. Can you go back one on the next steps? Oh, yeah, thank you. So as I mentioned, this is a new program. We are still working out some of the kinks and working on the details. And what we'd like to do is, given that all the permits are coming through the planning departments, we'd like to work with the various cities, counties in Santa Cruz, as well as in Monterey, to publicize this opportunity. What can we do to really move this faster and get more people building ADUs? And our plan is to open up the applications on our website around mid-October. The way we are planning to do the selection will be based on the quality and completeness of the requirements, and also what Habitat always uses, what does a family need? And then once we go through the process, we will interview the finalists, and then we'll provide a commitment letter, and we'll take it from there. So that in a nutshell is what we are looking at, using how we're using these funds in a way that we have never used before. And we are trying to limit it to 5 units instead of all $1 million, but maybe up to $500,000. We can see what impact we can make in the community and help people of low-income families who have equity in the home, have home ownership, but would like to have some financing, some help in building ADUs. Thank you.
That's awesome, Satish. Thank you so much for being here with us and presenting on that wonderful program. I love the My House, My Hope program and the Cal Home Grant program. I just wanted to mention that the next round of applications are due November 22nd for any local governments that's on the call right now, and any nonprofits. Know that that's available to you, and it's also listed as a resource in our finance guide in the ADU white paper, alongside many other financing programs. So that was wonderful. Thank you so much, Satish. I know you have to run off to a board meeting, so thanks for your time and your expertise, and we'll go ahead and turn it over to our next presenter.
Thanks, Ashley.
So here we have Ms. Hillary Seiler with Umpqua Bank, who's a home loan officer there. She will be talking to you about their loan products for ADUs. Hillary?
Thank you, Ashley. Hey, everybody. My name is Hillary. I've been a construction and renovation loan lender for 11 years. I know my bio says 7, but it's because I haven't updated it in a while. And I realized I date back all the way to 2009. So I need to get that updated. I specialize in ADU financing. I have since 2012, when it became a pretty popular thing in the state of Oregon, and made my way down to California and started working with people, including Valley Home Development, who you will see on this call. I have a fantastic relationship with them. They're great. So today I'm going to talk with you about financing options for ADUs. And Ashley, if we could, or I'm sorry, not Ashley. Can we go, there it is, next slide. So I want to talk you through 3 conventional financing options today. I'm going to keep it short and sweet, but if there's one specifically you want to dive into, you can always reach out to me. My contact info will be available at the end. But the 3 main financing options for a conventional loan, when you're talking about ADUs, are the home equity lines of credit, cash out refinances, and then construction and renovation loans. So let's hit each of these. First one is the home equity line of credit. Basically what that is it's tapping into any equity you already have. We're not looking at future value. We're not looking at what you're placing on the property and how that's going to improve value, because we're taking your house at face value today. So for someone who's maybe lived in their house for 5 to 10 years, been paying down your mortgage, doing all the right things, you may have enough equity to tap into to build the micro ADU or the JADU or just a traditional ADU. So this can be used and cultivated in a very quick manner. Home equity lines of credit are the cheapest startup cost loans because it's a line of credit. You can draw on it as you need it. So if your project takes a little longer, you have flexibility. And also you can pay your contractor directly. The bank isn't involved once they issue the line of credit. So that's a home equity line of credit. The second option is a cash out refinance. People like this one a bit more because a cash out refinance is rewriting the loan on your house, putting it into another 15, 20, or 30-year mortgage. So when you're talking about a home equity line of credit, that's actually a second mortgage, and it's typically a variable rate mortgage. Scares people a little, which I totally understand. But if you're disciplined with a home equity line, it's easier to use. If you say, hey, I just want my cash out, I want a lump sum, I want to pay it back over 30 years, cash out refinance is a great option. The first two options I've presented to you do require some equity stake in the house. So for a younger generation, if you're looking to work with millennials, I am a millennial, technically right on the cusp. I'm almost to the being too old to be a millennial, but for those people that are buying and building and doing all of the things between the 25 and 40 range, they are probably going to fall into the construction loan range. A construction loan is different from almost every other type of financing when you're talking to a traditional bank, because we are looking at what your house is going to be worth once your ADU is built. So what I would do is I would look at what's your project look like? How is that going to improve the value of your home? And then once we know what that value improvement is, then we will lend to that value. So that sounds a little complicated, but the short and sweet of it is this. If your house is worth $400,000 before you build an ADU, and building the ADU values it at $500,000, I can lend up to 95% of that $500,000, which means I can give you a lot more bang for your buck using a construction loan when you don't have a ton of equity stake. Now, these are all conventional loans. You guys will hear a lot today about a lot of different ways to do things. Not everyone falls into a conventional loan. In fact, I probably talk to about every 3 to 5 people I talk to, only one or two will fall into these loans right now, but that's something that we can project to. So if you're talking to a client or you are somebody who wants to build an ADU and the plan is still a couple years out, be strategic, figure out which one of these loans is going to work for you. Have the conversation with someone like myself now so that you can plan for 12, 24, or 36 months down the line. And then you can pick and choose which loan's going to be the best option for you. And the nice thing is they're all residential mortgages, which means you get to talk to your CPA about the tax benefits of having a traditional residential mortgage. So in a nutshell, those are the quick financing tips today. I only have a few minutes. So if you have any questions, there's my contact information. Please reach out. Feel free to email. Give me a call if you'd like to talk in more detail. And thank you so much for having me, guys.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Hillary. You broke it down so well. Oftentimes it's very, can get very confusing with all the nuances and everything like that. So thanks for giving us a really, short and sweet, deep dive on all these financing options that UMCO provides. Great. Thanks. You will definitely be in touch. All right. So next up we have, and the sun is out. We have Larry Hartman, Director of Lending and Sales with the Central Coast Federal Credit Union, to talk about their loan products for ADUs. Larry?
Thanks, Ashley. Thank you very much.
Great.
Hi. Good afternoon, everyone. Basically, I'm here this afternoon to talk to you about Central Coast Federal Credit Union. We are a local community-based credit union. On the next slide, it'll actually talk about our membership requirements. We're a full service financial institution. We're community based here in Monterey County. So we make all of our local credit decisions here within our 4 retail branches. We have 2 in South County, 1 in South Main and Salinas, and 1 here in Seaside. And all of our loan officers are equipped with lending authority. So we make all of our credit decisions at a local level versus going to some big back office area. Our membership to join our credit union would be basically if you live, work, or worship in Monterey County, you can join Central Coast Federal Credit Union. And then our properties that we lend against would be basically anything within California. Maybe you live in Monterey, but you have another home up north, for instance, and you want to put an ADU on that property, we'd be happy to help you with the financing on that project as well. Our home equity line of credit is what I specifically want to talk about this evening. Reasons that you might want to access your equity would be obviously to maybe what we're talking about tonight, build an ADU, or for a room addition or home improvements, debt consolidations, tuition, maybe just cash reserves. Maybe it's something you think in the next 2 or 3 years you might want to consider building onto your home or adding that ADU. Now might be the time to go ahead and get that home equity loan so that you can get that part out of the way. Basically, our rates start right now at 3.75. They are adjustable rate, and they start with prime plus margin. So whatever the Fed funds rate is today, we would add the margin to that, and we determine that margin by your credit score. So obviously, from a risk-based pricing perspective, the higher your credit score, the less your borrowing costs will be. And then the max would be 5% over the starting rate. So if you have a 3.75 start, then the max would go to 8.75 if it would ever climb that high. And then just from a cash availability standpoint, we go up to 80% of the primary home value. We would require an appraisal. And then from that perspective, we'll determine what the available line amount would be for you to access that particular amount of cash. And then if you have a rental property, for instance, this is something a lot of folks don't think about. Maybe I don't want an ADU on my primary home, but I want one next to my rental property. We'll basically do that as well. So if that one will go up to 70% of the value of that particular property. And then if you go to the next slide, this kind of breaks down the benefits and features. I thought this was a pretty awesome slide. It kind of breaks down for those that aren't familiar with home equity lines of credit and how they work. So specifically at Central Coast, we have a 10-year draw period. So during that 10 years, what that means is that you can access it if you want to. If you don't want to, you don't have to. That money's there available for you to draw against for that 10 years. You'll borrow against it, pay it down, borrow against it, pay it down, and it works back and forth, just kind of like a pendulum. So when the 10 years is over with, then we look at the current balance at that time, and we'll amortize it and make a payment for you for the remaining 20 years to get it paid off. So there's no basically balloon payment or surprise payment that comes up at the end of that 10-year draw period. We'll work with you on what that payment's going to look like for the next 20 years. And you can obviously prepay at any time. So if you take out the loan and you take out your first draw for $10,000 and you decide, you know what, I'm not going to do this, you can pay it back, and there's no penalty for prepaying. You can actually close it any time you want as well, and there's no fee to close it. The balloon payment isn't there, like I talked about. There's no annual fee as well. So again, it's a product that pretty much doesn't have any fees assessed to it at all while you have access to those particular monies. And then the closing fees and escrow costs that we use to close those lines of credit, as long as you take $10,000 out at closing, then there's no cost to you to do that loan except the appraisal. So we ask that the member would pay for the appraisal at the time of loan application. And we basically make your monthly payments or interest and principal only on the amount that you draw. So for instance, if you draw $100,000 out to build your ADU, that payment's $463 a month if you qualify for the 3.75% rate. So at $463 a month, you're going to have some pretty good cash flow there. And then if you talk about the features, basically we can close those in 30 days or less. If you're W-2 pay stub, those go really fast. If you're self-employed and you get me all your tax returns really fast, I'll turn those around as fast as possible as well. Our loan officers in each of our branch and our branch managers, they can all turn those loans around really, really quick. There's no minimum amount, basically, so you don't have to say, well, you know, what's the maximum I can borrow? What's the minimum amount I can borrow? That's determined by you and the appraisal, what you're comfortable with and how much you feel like you need. And then you can access those funds in multiple ways. I tried to list some of them here as features, but you know, I think the biggest way that folks access that cash is by writing checks. If they're paying contractors or an architect or something along those lines, they'll have those. They can also use a Visa debit card tied to that account and make those payments as well that way, which that even works a little bit faster than the old-fashioned checks. And then obviously, as Hillary had mentioned earlier, the tax deduction is all financial guys and ladies out there. We all sometimes say, well, see your tax advisor for the tax deductible options. Everyone's tax situation is different. So that's going to depend on what you're using the property for and all those types of things. And we ask you to contact the individual that does your taxes for you. So we have a great product. If you go to the next slide, this is our contact information. Mine specifically is there. We have a website as well where you can look at all of our products and services online. You can actually apply for membership online. My mobile's out there as well. You can text me at any time or give me a call directly on my cell phone. Any questions you want to have about payment scenarios or rates or credit or any of that type of stuff, we'll be happy to get to know each other. So thanks for tuning in.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Larry. That's all great. All of these products are really fantastic, and we'll definitely have links to them in our white paper. Someone asked earlier if these slides will be available to everyone on this call, and yes, they will be in the form of a PDF, and we will also have all these hyperlinks to websites and resources and emails embedded in the PDF. We will embed it into our recap shortly after this event, in addition to each of our websites, and both MBEPs and United Way Monterey counties. So thank you so much, Larry, Hillary, and Satish. That concludes our finance section. And again, we have a ton of other finance programs and products and models that we outline in the paper. But now we will go ahead and move into the second segment on building. As you all know, there are several factors that can influence the cost of ADU development. While some are unavoidable, hard and soft costs and fees can be greatly influenced by several considerations at the beginning of the planning process. And it really often depends on what your goals are and what your site looks like. And so the next set of presenters will really look at the pros and cons of building manufactured versus site-built and prefabricated ADUs. So without further ado, Mr. Eric Johnson, Chief Executive Officer of R3, which stands for Rehabilitation, Restoration, and Respite. Take it away, Eric.
Or respite. Now you know why we name it R3, so that's good. I've got a bunch of slides that I'll flip through quickly, but really appreciate being with everybody here. And again, wanted to give, just from our insights, a little bit about manufactured versus site-built, pros and cons of each option, and some of the cost differentials that you might run into with choosing one particular option over another. I'll also kind of take a little time to present what projects are ideal for site-built versus manufactured, just to give people a better idea of that. But it's a great option. There's probably about 22 million manufactured housing units across the United States. So they are used and utilized very broadly in communities across the U.S. I think the average cost of a manufactured housing unit is about $85,000. Nationally, it's a lot different in California, as you might expect, but nonetheless, they're widely used. So it's important to talk about them certainly as a building option. Next slide. So R3, just so you know who we are, we're a nonprofit. We focus in whoops, one back, please. Thank you. Our nonprofit is really focused on a mission, and our mission is really caring for the poor, our homeless, people in crisis. And we're both a collaborator in terms of bringing communities together and people that want to provide housing for this constituency, if you will, but also churches and other agencies that provide the wraparound services, especially where we're building community villages, if you will, that are really built to help them get people back on their feet. So our vision is really bringing truly low-cost housing solutions to the market. We'll talk a little bit more about how we do that. As well as these, we call them micro housing solutions right now. There's a lot of confusion about tiny homes versus ADUs versus small units and all that. So I'll differentiate a little bit in those, but we're really talking primarily micro housing units all the way from 200 to 800 square feet in general. We're completely mission driven. We are very good at coordinating wraparound services for villages and communities where we're building units. But we're also connecting wherever we can into employment opportunities and social enterprises for our villages and the people that we're housing. So this is really important in homeless circles, as you might imagine, which is where I spend a lot of time. But nonetheless, this is a key part of our village construct, if you will. And our primary goal is to restore the lives of those that we get to serve and get people back integrated into community and something that we can replicate and multiply in other communities. So next slide. So this is our challenge and solutions, if you will. One of the biggest things in homelessness, and people are always asking, well, doesn't everyone on the street a beggar with their hand out, and they can really just get a job and get back to work. And no, that's not, that's a small segment of our homeless, but really where we're experiencing the primary gap for homeless that are experiencing that is either a crisis in their life that causes them to lose their job, or they have a healthcare crisis that dries up all their savings, whatever it may be, or they've broken relationships that are irreparable, and find them really in a situation where their income just can't substantiate the housing cost. And so we're trying to fill that gap with these villages and housing solutions, and see if we can incorporate economic development and raising people's income in the midst of that. Next slide. One of the unique partnerships we developed to help this happen is with our prisons, with the California Department of Corrections. And right now we're piloting and finishing up a pilot in Soledad Prison here in Monterey County as part of their vocational building program in the prison. And we're building these micro housing manufactured units in the prison with the purpose, several purposes, but one, of course, is to train up prisoners in construction skills, so that when they get out of prison, they actually don't go back to prison. And so it's an anti-recidivism strategy, if you will. But it also leads to actually a shortening of the time served in prison by the prisoners that are part of the construction program. So they actually earn their ways into the program, and then they learn all these great skills. So they're learning framing, they're learning HVAC, electrical, plumbing, even solar, and again, provides a great way to land a job when they get out. We also, some of you know Rancho Cielo locally, we just finished building 2 units with them as part of their construction program. So we're doing some in prison, some out, but we're working with education programs that are using this as a way to both prepare our workforce and put people on their feet. Well, this has a natural consequence, particularly in manufactured housing, of keeping the cost very low. And in essence, we're paying for materials and transportation of the homes and so on, but we're not paying market rate that you would find on some of these units out in the open market. So it's a unique partnership we've had now for about 4 years, and we'll be expanding actually to another 6 to 8 prisons over the next year throughout Northern and Southern California. Next slide. These are just definitions. We kept these in here, but I wanted to actually go to the next slide. I just want to make sure we're clear about tiny homes versus ADUs. Tiny homes have a very specific definition in California, certainly, and I think it's actually nationally, but it's generally homes that are less than 400 square feet. And people, when you're watching all the programs on TV, the tiny homes on wheels and everything else, when they're on wheels, they're actually regulated typically by the DMV as opposed to HUD or HCD in the building code. So some cities are starting to accept tiny homes on wheels as valid living quarters, and not just as an RV park or a trailer park where they might be expected to move around or move within a year. So, but ADUs by contrast are actually smaller independent residential units, and they typically are on foundations, whether that's pier blocks or board foundation or whatever they may be. They're intended to be permanent dwellings, and this has actually some implications with regard to funding for housing vouchers and things like that for people that might be seeking to get a unit. So next page. So what are some of the pros and cons of building options? I've got a couple slides on this, and I broke it out by both the features of manufactured housing versus site-built, and then cost, time to construct, et cetera. So some of these are intuitive, some might not be, but in terms of cost of housing for manufactured housing versus site-built, usually manufactured housing is somewhere 40 to 60% less than site-built. That has to do with both the ability to buy in bulk materials, and as well as the time it takes to get to market, if you will, on housing and some of the construction loans and things you pay. So yes, you can take advantage of some of the bulk purchases that some of these manufacturing sites can do. The time to construct a unit is also often about half, depending on if you can get materials. These days with COVID and so on, materials have been both more difficult to come by, and they're also more expensive. But the nice thing about manufactured units is you can build them at the same time you're doing your site improvements and utilities and so on. So it really helps shorten the time to market on getting your housing done. So I put that as the next point. Sorry about that. Flexibility in design. You have a little bit more limitations on manufactured housing. There's just a lot of designs out there. You might be able to change the color, the exterior, some of the interior features, but obviously with a site built, you can design however you want. So you have maximum flexibility that way. Foundation costs. Okay, David, I'll answer your questions a bit. Foundation costs there are lower. We've been able to build these and put manufactured units on pure blocks or on perimeter foundations, as opposed to a full slab, which is more expensive and again more difficult to build simply because it takes more time and expense. You do have transportation costs with the manufactured housing. Depends on how far you're going and where you're ordering from and everything else, but somewhere between 2,500 and 5,000 might be a typical transportation cost for a unit to a site. And then the lender requirements, you had some good input from your lenders earlier about how they treat ADUs or manufactured housings, but in some instances, manufactured units might be treated as personal property instead of real estate. Depends on where you're placing them and who owns the land and everything else. But so that's just a couple features. If you go to the next slide as well. This kind of points out from what we've experienced, sort of ideal projects for manufactured housing versus site built. On the manufactured side, it's easily accessible. Property makes sense. That is where you can get transportation into a property easily, and you've got ideally 10 feet or thereabouts on the side of properties to be able to transport units in and out, as opposed to having to crane it over the top of a building, which is more expensive. So if you're more cost conscious, you have a set budget, the manufactured housing again tends to be more affordable. The shorter timeline to use. So if you've got both perhaps interest costs on a construction loan, or if you've got to get housing up because you've got, for example, 4,000 Afghan immigrants that are coming into the Central Valley that some of the organizations are having to deal with now, that you might have a need to get these units quicker. Soils come into play in some of these, whether you can use pure blocks or if you need a full slab foundation or not, but that's driven by engineering and so on. And as I said, there's hundreds of designs to choose from on the market. You just have a little bit more limitation on the flexibility on some of the unique designs. Site builds tend to be better if you have a narrow lot or it's unusually configured, and you might have to actually structure your unit differently than just a straight rectangle or whatever it may be from a manufacturer standpoint. Where an owner desires maximum flexibility in design and selection of interiors, again, site built might be better for that. If you have a generous budget, we've seen in the Bay Area a lot of homes going, for the ADUs in the 300, 350, 400 and up dollars per square foot. Generally manufactured housing you can order for somewhere between 175 and 225 a square foot, sometimes even less than that, depending on your features. So if you're looking at sites also where you're adding unique features that will add resale value to your property, then perhaps site built works better there. And then you may run into sometimes where your architectural conditions by a city or county to match the primary residence, for example, and so it might not be as available through manufactured housing. So those are just a few observations we've had on manufactured versus site built. Next slide. Okay, the next slide. I don't know if I can do it. Thank you. All right. Last couple of things I wanted to share was comparative costs. And again, this is we've experienced for manufactured versus site built. But here again, try to compare features. You guys can go through these and you'll have these slides. But generally, your planning and building department fees may be about the same, depending on if they've got pre-designed ADUs that are available. Water, sewer, approximately the same. The only thing you might not run into is fire sprinklers and ADUs that you might on site built. Depends on if they have them in the primary residence or not. PG&E hookups are about the same. The architectural planning, design, construction documents will tend to be less expensive, especially if you choose from pre-designed plans. Solar will be required on practically all new additions, certainly over 500 square feet, as some new California law just come out on that. But solar will run in this range for both site built versus manufacturing. And then you've got soil reports. Again, they'll be comparable for both. So those are some of your soft costs. On the hard costs on the next slide, this is where you see some of the differences of costs. Is the next slide available? Sorry, can I do it? I don't know if I can do it. Thank you. So building costs, this is really where you start to see some of the differences on not so much on the grading and conduits, but on the foundations. You certainly have a difference there because you can use pure blocks and different stuff. And then you'll see on landscaping, very comparable, but your construction cost is really where you save. So again, we've seen several manufacturers in the 75 to 150, maybe $200 per square foot range. This is your more typical of 175 to 350 on the site built. And then you do have transportation costs that I mentioned earlier that come with a unit. So this is a quick, I took this out of a recent survey. It goes through 2019, but just shows you your average cost on new manufactured homes nationally over a period of about 6 years here. $56 a square foot. This has gone up, of course, in recent years compared to about 118 on a site built. Again, this is from national data, but you can go back and look at this for yourself and just see the difference. Next slide. This is our price points that have in terms of new home price per square foot in Salinas, just to give you an idea of where we're at on fully built site built homes. But this is kind of the trend of the cost per square foot, which is why so many people are looking at manufactured housing. Next slide. I'm just going to flip through these. These are 3 models we're building with Soledad Prison. This is a 400 square foot model that has a full kitchen, bathroom, shower, and kind of a Murphy bed configuration. Or if you go to a 400 square foot like this, it adds 2 bedrooms to the unit. The next slide has a 600 square foot unit. And what we do is we build them actually in 200 square foot increments. So we can just add 2 more bedrooms on the far side. And we have now 4 bedrooms on a 600 square foot unit. And then the final slide, if you will, is an 800 square foot unit. This is an ADA compliant unit. It's got really kind of double the core here and adds an extra bathroom, but gives you all the turnaround radiuses and everything else you need for your ADA compliance. So next slide. This is why we do what we do. And this is one of our guys in prison right now. He's getting out in about a year. He asked me just the other day if he could come to work with us when he's out. And he's learned all the construction trades. He's absolutely been phenomenal in the prison. They're building really, really quality units. And I get to write letters for him to his parole board and let him know how well he's doing, as well as come to work for us. So that's our story of why we do what we do. So next slide. And then these are just some pictures to share with you of some of the units being built and transported. These are up at Rancho Cielo. And then the other ones are some of the prison builds. So I think I'll finish there. I think that was all I had. Oh, sorry. One last. This is for a village construct like I talk about. This is a number of partners here in Salinas that we're working together with to develop a village for about 100 people to live in. That will have a mix of tiny homes and some apartment units. But this is the typical construct of the agencies we work with, if you will, across multiple venues to put a project like this together, which is a lot of fun. So. All right, I think I'm done now, right? Thanks, Ashley.
That's great. Wonderful, Eric. Yeah, that was a really great overview of just all these workforce development and job training opportunities that R3 is providing. And, it was a really good overview of the pros and cons too. And just so one remembers that this is observations and experiences specific to Eric and R3. And we do have other vendors on the call that's about to present that may have other perspectives. And so we'll go ahead and jump over to our next presenter, which is Thomas Rettenwender, Chief Executive Officer of Ecologic Architects. Thomas, take it away. Is Thomas with us? Okay, he might be having some technical issues. So why don't we go ahead and fast forward to our next speaker. Okay, Thomas will be with us shortly. But for the sake of time, let's just go ahead and jump over to Steve Vallejos, Chief Executive Officer of Prefab ADU. I know you guys have some really exciting new prefabricated ADU products, so I'll let you go ahead and share that with us.
Thank you. It's been an interesting presentation so far. I'll have to say this. It's been great input, and I hope the audience is getting a lot of good information, and hopefully we'll have our portion of it to share here. So can we move to the next slide? So before I go into the slide that talks a little bit more about what we're going to show here, my name is Steve Leos. I'm the president owner of Prefab ADU. I also run a Prefab ADU, by the way, is a panelized ADU kit manufacturer. We're based here in the North Bay, Solano County, kind of adjacent to Napa, and we build kits for all over the state. I also run a construction company called Valley Home Development, which Hillary mentioned, and we've done loans with Hillary for construction of ADUs, as well as some of the modular homes that we build. And we have experience doing pretty much every kind of prefab method. The next slide, please. I wanted to talk a little bit about our time in the ADU space, and what we've been doing, and what we're really excited to share with you guys today. So my experience is I've been in the ADU space for over 16 years, strictly doing prefab solutions. So that's modular, panelized, manufactured. We explored a couple of different other technologies as well, but found them very difficult to use in California to meet seismic code and things. So primarily it's modular, manufactured, and panelized. But as Prefab ADU, we are a panelized solution provider. And we're focusing on providing solutions that are basically these three things: easy, fast, and affordable. We built over 250 ADUs in Northern California. We've been intimately involved in all of the legislation that you heard Greg speak about early on, being that we got into this space around 2006. And we also are now moving on to helping cities improve the ADU process by helping them set up methods for pre-approved plans and how to streamline the process, and really kind of helping them get education about the perception of things on both the consumer and the designer, builder, developer side of the world. So with that, we're constantly involved with finding ways to make this easier for the consumer. Next slide, please. So what I'm here to talk about today really is three products that we call our micro series. And strange, I wasn't expecting the word micro to be used so much today prior to us coming on, but it's good that it is. I think we'll have a different perspective a little bit on it. For us, the micro series for us is plans that start off at about 150 square feet on up to 250 square feet. We're truly, actually, in my mind, defining micro, because these are units that are basically built all the way down to what the state allows as the bare minimum for an ADU, which is called an efficiency unit at 150 square feet. So this series of products, the micro series, is the smallest set of our 4 plan sets. So we have micros, minis, suites, and villas. Obviously, as you get to the villas, we're in the like the 750, I think it's about 700 square feet and above range. But these are particular interest to me today to talk to you about, because next slide, please. Because we really want to talk about something that's really new and we're introducing here is the 3 build options for our kits. Traditionally, over the years, we've tied our kits to qualified professionals like my contracting company and other contracting companies that buy and install the kits and help the consumer with the full build. But over the years, we've had a lot of questions from the consumers about, look, how can I continue to try and find ways to save some money and maybe do some of these tasks myself? And so over the years, we've allowed, we as a contractor and other contractors have allowed the homeowners to take on certain tasks, but we've kind of graduated to the point where What we really needed to do is explore the option of a fully DIY-able product. And so that's why we actually put these three plans together, is to really focus on how we can make this really affordable to people. So the goal here is to find ways to save up to 40, it's actually 45 to almost 50%. Next slide, please. So with that in mind, what we've done here with these three plans is just give you a quick overview of what they are. So starting at the top, the Micro 150 is a studio. It has a little 4-foot kitchenette, and it has, it's basically a 12 by 12 and a half square foot, 12 by 12 and a half unit that makes 150 square feet. And we actually have a demo unit here at our facility that we've actually trucked it around, actually all over the bay, down as far as I think Morgan Hill for a presentation. But it is here, and it shocks people exactly how big it is for something that actually seemingly seems in some people's mind too small to live. But the idea here is that we really want to focus on affordability. So in the blue column here for the Micro 150, the 200, and the 250, you see its full build cost as a contractor build. So we're focusing on, even at that price, trying to make these attainable, because even at that price point, if this was added to your mortgage, even the Micro 250 would only amount to a few $100s a month being added to your mortgage, in terms of giving you a unit if you're trying to do something for family that is truly affordable to the low and extremely low income. But given the fact that we get a lot of people who ask these questions, is what if I try to do some of these things on my own? Well, you can now step into the role of the supervisor of the project and hire different subs to do work. Say, for instance, the foundation, tilt the kit up, maybe do the roofing, the electrical, some of the different tasks, or all of the different tasks. You can see about a 20 to 24% savings depending on which of these plans you're choosing. But if you really wanted to take on the whole project yourself, because it's being pitched so much on TV, and do this as a DIY, that's entirely up to you. And that's where you can actually save close to 50% depending on the plan that you select here. And that's a really, really big difference, because I think on the Micro 150, that drops it down to, I think, like 43,000 to build. And the Micro 250, I think, drops to, I think, like 50, I think it's about 54,000 to build. So the goal here for us is to take our products that we have and our process that we have streamlined into the scaling model, and allow that to be something that is almost IKEA-like in terms of putting together furniture, and actually be able to build a unit at a truly affordable cost. So I didn't do much more than prepare slides to go over this. And I'm glad, because it seems like a lot of the information was covered. I mean, I could certainly answer a lot of questions about manufactured versus modular and on all the other different aspects. But for my standpoint, I really wanted to just focus on really how we're bringing this kind of really, really affordable units to the consumer. So if you have any questions, I believe this slideshow will be made available to you, but you can go to our website, and Michelle and Daniel are our first point of contacts for consumers. And we're also spending a lot of time talking to contractors, architects, and nonprofits about how to utilize our products as well. So even for those people who spoke before me, there may be some great opportunities for us to work together on helping the Monterey County community with ADUs. Thanks.
Great, thank you so much, Steve. Yeah, these are really, really exciting products that are coming to market. So thanks for being here to share these, not just design, but you're also doing construction as well. So that's really exciting. Hopefully we can get some pre-approved plans in our county with you all and several other vendors. So let's go ahead and move on to our third and last speaker. We'll bring back Thomas to the camera. There he is. And then we'll just scroll back to his slide. There we go. Great. And I'll go ahead and stick your bio in the chat. Take it away, Thomas. Thank you.
Lovely, thank you. Yeah, sorry about that. My system froze, but thanks for squeezing me in here. Yeah, my name is Thomas Rettenvender. You can go to the next slide. My firm, Ecologic Architects, we provide site design and property layout services, as well as the actual building design, and we emphasize the integration of prefabricated materials in our designs. We also provide structural engineering services, permit coordination, and also construction management. We're kind of a one-stop shop, and we are in the sort of the front lines of trying to get your permits. Sometimes it gets a little physical with the building officials, but no, not really. I am a licensed architect, so we are able to certify architectural and structural plans. Next slide. Let's see, looks like there's a bit of a lag, so you get a preview of what I'll be talking about. Here we go. So I just wanted to alert you to our recently updated website, ecologicarc.com. And there's a button on the top right corners where you can go ahead and schedule a free consultation with us. We're excited to hear about any plans that you might have. I wanted to emphasize also that every project is different, every site is different. And so one of the things we really specialize in is understanding the client's needs and responding to those, understanding the site constraints, and really coming up with a suitable design solution. So next slide. To give you an overview of where we operate, we've got about 20 projects currently. About half of those are ADU projects. And yeah, mainly we're focused in Seaside, Salinas, and Carmel, but we also do projects in Carmel Valley. We also have a project in San Jose and in Los Angeles. Next slide. So one thing I wanted to emphasize is that ADUs don't necessarily need to be small, and they don't necessarily need to be in the backyard, sort of hidden away from the public view. This property is at a very prominent corner lot here in Seaside, and at the corner of Noche Buena and San Pablo Avenue. And we're able to, you are allowed 1,200 square feet if it's a detached ADU. And in this design, this two-story design, we have 4 bedrooms plus a family room that could be converted into a bedroom as well. So practically 5 bedrooms. We also have an accessory structure in the back that serves as a storage structure. So next slide. So here gives you an idea of the site plan. So here we are on a corner lot, and we're able to place this ADU and the accessory structure in such a way that it meets the building code and the zoning code. And it's, like I said, it's quite a prominent location. Next slide. So here we see a rendering of the ADU from the corner. Next slide. Another project that I'd like to share is on San Juan Grade Road in Salinas. So I think it's fairly rare that homeowners have a large open space to build with. In this case, the owners do have quite a sizable backyard. but we also have other structures involved in this design, a workshop, a trellis, and a new covered patio area. So if you go to the next slide. So you can see that the ADU is just a part of the assembly or the composition of structures that create a really nice courtyard and allow the homeowners to have celebrations and parties for their friends and family. Next slide. Next slide. This is another example of a ADU project, and we are planning an addition to an existing home and incorporating a junior ADU as well as an ADU. Next slide. So you see this ADU kind of spans over 3 stories. In the middle story in red, you see the junior ADU, which is within the boundaries of the existing home. It's an existing lower floor. And then the green is an addition. So that's the ADU. And essentially what we're doing is we're turning one unit, one single family into 3 units using these existing ADU laws. Next slide. So yeah, again, I want to emphasize that the site selection and how these ADUs are integrated into an existing property can be kind of complicated in that we're dealing with site constraints such as trees, slope, and of course all the zoning and building code regulations. Next slide. So we have a history. I've been teaching green building and sustainable building design for over 10 years, primarily at UC Santa Cruz, but this structure we built at Hartnell College, and it was designed to be portable in that it can be lifted with a crane. We see a picture here of it being transported. Next slide. The micro house is especially interesting. It's a tiny house on wheels that we built at San Jose City College with students. And it has a central control system that allows us with this touch on our cell phone to unfold these wall panels to double the square footage of the house from 200 to 380 square feet, almost double. Next slide. The sunroom is a project that was designed by one of our students at UC Santa Cruz, and we're following through and going to be building this structure, and we're limiting ourselves to a budget of about $30,000, and we're hoping to achieve that ambitious budget by using recycled materials. It has some interesting features such as a bed that retracts down from the ceiling, and it's just about 250 square feet. Next slide. And yeah, another thing to emphasize is our ability to simulate our designs before we build them. So 3D modeling it really kind of livens up the design and allows us to really study the designs in 3 dimensions. Next slide. So yeah, so I wanted to point out that our website address is ecologicarc.com, and we look forward to hearing from you. If you're thinking about building an ADU, feel free to schedule a free consultation with us. We love to come up with site solutions that work well based on your needs and the site that's available. And I would emphasize that for cost effectiveness, you really want to make sure that what you're building functions well, it meets your needs, and is well built, so that it will be there for your future generations. And yeah, I also wanted to mention that we're hiring. We've been, I think there's sort of a limited amount of people skilled in design and construction. So please contact us if you know of anybody interested in getting involved in this field. And I'd love to tell you more about our educational programs as well. But I think we'll leave that for another time. But thanks so much for this opportunity to share some of our work. And yeah, look forward to seeing and hearing from some of you.
Great. Thank you so much, Thomas. Those are really beautiful designs, really great projects. We're at this time, and we're really good timing right now, 6:15. We've got about 15 minutes for Q&A. So a lot of great products, a lot of great programs. We're going to ask everyone to come back on screen. And I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Kelly to moderate our Q&A, and I'll be here to help answer some of them too.
All right, thank you, Ashley, and thank you so much to our speakers. There's quite a few questions. Most of them are policy related, but I will go ahead and let anyone who wants to answer kind of take over and answer as they would like to. The first question is actually for Thomas specifically. Thomas, what is the cost per square foot of your custom built ADU?
Yes, that's a good question. It really depends on the site constraints and the design, but we have verified construction costs of around $200 per square foot for fairly simple dwellings here in the seaside area. But again, yeah, it's a little hard to predict with the swing in construction costs.
Thank you. And so there was a question, can someone speak more to a portable ADU? What is that and how does that differ from other manufactured units?
I'm sorry, Kelly, can you repeat the question again?
Yeah, what's the difference? What are the differences between portable ADUs and other manufactured units?
I think that's a real tough question to answer, because according to the ADU regulations, there really isn't a portable ADU solution. I mean, you can get into a gray area with that question about the possibility of considering like manufacturing and modular units portable, because they are portable in terms of getting them from the factory to the site. But once they're on the site, they are by local building codes, they're usually required to be placed on a permanent foundation. So they're no longer portable. So for the generalized view of ADUs, outside of looking at a tiny home, which is considered like an RV, every other method of building is a permanent structure. So that's my best way of trying to answer that question.
Yeah, maybe if I could chime in there. Yeah, my understanding is that those laws are changing, that some jurisdictions are allowing tiny houses on wheels to be installed on properties. as ADUs, but then with that, I think maybe what Steve was saying is true, where you have to have certain on-site infrastructure where you where to plug in. It's kind of like in an RV park setting where you would plug into permanent utilities on the property, and that would all be regulated by the building code, the local building codes.
Great. And what are the estimates for design and permit coordination?
Well, I could speak to that. It does certainly depend on the complexity of the design, the complexity of the site. If there's if you're on a slope, or if you have plenty of space to build with. Yeah, we have over 20 years in practice. We do have several sort of pre-approved designs that we're happy to adapt for certain situations. And we also have certain permitting templates for simpler projects where we can kind of jumpstart the permit coordination process. Having said that, every jurisdiction is a little different, and it comes down to the permit technicians. You know, sometimes they make the process permitting quite difficult. But you know, I think the design and permitting coordination, structural engineering costs for a small ADU would begin at around $4,000 to $5,000.
I think I can answer as well. I think you're going to get, you ask 10 different ADU resources. This question, you'll get 10 different answers. So since there's only a couple here, we'll give you a couple answers. From my perspective, all of our products are ADU designs that we have done over and over and over again. So our 12 plans, if you're coming to us in a jurisdiction that the product isn't pre-approved, we charge $9,800 to put the whole package together, full site plan and everything, submit it, walk it through the permitting process. The permit fees are going to vary city by city. Generally speaking, we're with the work we've done on legislation over the last 5-6 years, we've been whittling that down. So what was 10 years ago a $30,000 or more permit is now in most jurisdictions it's no more than maybe $4,000 or $5,000 now on the permitting side. But I'll add the other caveat because this was a subject is pre-approved plans. In our case, the municipalities that we work with, where our product is in as a pre-approved plan, we only actually charge $3,500 to put the package together, but that is actually credited back 100% when they go forward with the kit purchase. So in the end, the whole idea with us on our side of the court is that the pre-approved plans are a process to make it faster and essentially in the end free to the consumer.
Great, thank you. And actually, there is another question for you, Steve, about your kits. How difficult is it to install? Can anyone do it, or do you need to have some expertise to be able to put that together?
It's actually, the kit itself is actually very, very easy to install, and we actually have a full instruction manual that goes with it in terms of how to do it. And we're constantly growing on the construction side, our resources. So we just this actually 2 days ago, we had a 4-man crew that only one of the people on the crew had experience and the other 3 were inexperienced. We're also training other contractors to do the same. And what's funny about it is we constantly get the feedback like, wow, this is actually really easy. So that is the model that we've been chasing with what we do, is to make it easy. That's why we are introducing the DIYable product, because we actually do believe taking this through the full kit tilt up is something that is absolutely DIYable. The question about doing all the other aspects of it is really a question of like, like, do you know how to do sheetrock and texture? Do you know plumbing? Do you know electrical to finish these details off? That's going to be a little bit more questionable person to person, and who they have in their own resource pool. But the kit itself is actually very easy.
Well, that's great. There was a question near the beginning of the conference about solar panels, and I wonder if anyone can speak to that. What are the requirements around solar panels with manufactured homes or modular designs?
I can answer it just in general, but you know, anybody else can chime in as well. There is, from my experience, it doesn't matter what the building method is that you're using, the rules still apply. Manufactured homes fall under a different category. They're like, this gets really technical. Building code, they fall under Title 25 versus Title 24. So there are a lot of aspects of the manufactured home that are not subject to the local jurisdictions, local regulations. But in terms of the housing rules applied in California for solar being a requirement for all new housing units, they're not exempt from that. So it is required. So it doesn't matter whether you're using manufactured, modular, conventional site built, or panelized, the solar piece of it will always be part of the equation. Here's the thing. There are several different things that create exemptions to solar. For instance, obviously if you're doing a JADU inside the building, it's an existing structure, so you're not building a new housing unit, so it's not usually required there. We often find there's a lot of exemptions to, because ADUs are in the backyards and they tend to sometimes be covered by trees and different things. So there is no physical area where they get enough surface area on the roof to have a solar system that'll work. So they are often exempt as you go through the paperwork of filing and filling out the Title 24, the energy calculations. So the other scenario is you might not actually even have enough surface area on the roof. As we get down into these smaller ADUs, we find that by the time you look at the setbacks required, as well as the different like pipe penetrations for vent lines and different things that are required for the building itself, there just isn't enough surface area on the roof to actually adequately install a solar. And this is important to know, that the jurisdictions are not in a place at this point, from my understanding of my dialogue with HCD about this. They can't ask you to put that solar somewhere else. In other words, they can't say, well, you're putting this ADU on, if you can't fit it on the roof, we need you to put it on the ground, or we need you to put it on the roof of the other house. It either works on the ADU or it doesn't, and that's kind of where the line is drawn. So hopefully that helps with answering the question.
Yeah, thank you. I think that's very helpful. So I don't see a lot of other questions specifically for the speakers that we have on still now. Does anyone else have any questions for our prefab ADU developers or for our finance folks? Okay, I think we will then wrap things up here. Before we do, I have a representative from the city of Salinas who has joined us today. And the city of Salinas has some ADU workshops coming up, so I wanted to give her the opportunity to announce those. So Holly, if you want to come on and announce those.
Yeah, thank you, Kelly. Hi, my name is Holly Hodge, and I'm an AmeriCorps Vista with the city of Salinas. I'm going to go ahead and drop the link in our chat. And I just wanted to let everyone know that the city is having an ADU workshop series. The first one is next Wednesday, October 6th at 6 p.m. at the Firehouse Recreation Center. This is specifically for residents within the city of Salinas or people who work on ADU projects in the city. And we will be discussing how to build an ADU and about the building permit process for people who are going through it in Salinas. So feel free to send me your contact information in the chat if you'd prefer to do that. And otherwise, go to this link to sign up for the workshops or feel free to show up. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Holly. We're really looking forward to that. And thank you again to all of our fantastic speakers and to all of you for attending today. I will be posting a recording of this webinar onto our website in the next few days. I will also send a follow-up email with more information and a link to our website. If you have any additional questions, feel free to get in touch with Ashley or with me. And we have also put together a short survey for you to fill out as you exit the Zoom. So if you're able to just take 30 seconds and answer that survey, that would be fantastic and really helpful for us. So thank you again to everyone, and I hope you have a great rest of your evening.
Thank you. Enjoyed being here.
Thanks a lot, you guys. Good evening. Bye.
Thank you.